What's up, guys, and welcome back to another edition of Finding Your Competitive Edge. So I'm excited today because I love meeting new people, and probably like you, when you're introduced by a friend and they say, hey, Brian, you've got to know this person because not only their faith, they've got 7 kids, they've written a best-selling book, they've been on all these podcasts, they're a speaker, a coach, but more importantly, this is a man that, as I've gotten to know and do my homework and research, brings significant value and leads by example. And today you're going to find out, really, for a lot of us, you're in a place where you're wondering, does my life have meaning? Why am I stuck in the same situation and frustrated about my results or where I am? And today we really want to give you a pathway to create meaningful change in a meaningful life. And so if that resonates with you at all, you want to be your best, make sure you tune in, make sure you take notes. We're going to give you actionable items today, and we're going to help you move from wherever you are in point A to move to point B to where you really want to go. So I got to give a shout out to my friend Nicole, because Pastor Nicole introduced us, and Andrew Anderson. I cannot wait to break this down with you, because first call we had together, I go, hey man, my middle name's Andrew. This is kind of meant to be 7 kids. I don't know how you juggle that and do everything you do, but we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about your book, and really, for a lot of people, how can they break through their own limiting beliefs and create a plan of action today so that their life has meaning, it has purpose. And so welcome to the show, my friend.
Oh, so awesome to be with you, Brian. Thank you for having me. It's an honor. And your listeners, you have an incredible tribe. So I just want to give a shout out to them and thank them for spending some time with us today. We will deliver, and they will look back and they'll mark this as something they want to share with others, because I just know that God's going to do some great work today. So thank you.
Amen. Amen. And I'll put a plug, guys, as you're listening today, make sure you like, subscribe, all that fun stuff, leave comments. Actually, before this show, yesterday, I was reading some of the comments that come in, and that is some of the inspiration that really fuels me is, okay, what are you getting out of this? And what would you like to see more of? And so I want to jump right into it, because you, Andrew, as I'm going through your book, Strength of the Oak, Strength of the Willow, most people may go, okay, hold on, what's happening here?
Yeah.
Let's talk about what this is. I appreciate you sending me a copy, because I didn't know about your book until, of course, we had connected up. Let's talk about a little bit about where did that start from for you to even write the book? I'm always curious, where did that come from to even start to write this?
Well, 10 years ago this month, no joke, I swore off writing forever once I had completed my master's degree in education. And so I thought that I was just going to be free from writing for the rest of my life. And I joked that it would take an act of God to get me to ever write again. And that's exactly what happened. About 3.5 years ago, I found myself standing in the Virgin River in Zion National Park in southern Utah. Have you ever been, Brian?
I have not been. The closest I've been, Jackson Hole, Wyoming. We've been to Salt Lake City, Utah. I don't know how close Salt Lake is, but no.
Yeah, it's about 5 hours north of Zion National Park. So you got to put it on your bucket list. Your listeners, it's one of the most unique places in the world. And let me just describe the scenery. So I'm standing in the Virgin River, and I'm looking straight up at a rock wall that goes up for hundreds of feet, and it's that beautiful, deep orange red.
Oh,
And I'm looking at this incredible creation, and I have one of these moments where I just start kind of crying. I don't know why.
yeah.
And I'm just feeling the beauty of, what God has created in nature here. And as I'm feeling all this, the message comes to me, Andrew, this is a rock, and you are my son. Imagine what others will experience when you fulfill the measure of your creation.
Mm.
Then I'm like full on sobbing. And as I'm experiencing all this emotion, the words strength of the oak, strength of the willow
Yeah.
came to my mind, and I knew I had to write that book. I didn't know what it was going to be or how I was going to do it, but I felt called, and God planted that in my heart.
Man, isn't that cool? I think a lot of us go through life, and as I hear you share that, I think about a lot of us may have that calling, right? We may actually hear God's voice. We may hear, okay, hey, you need to go take this job. You need to move here. You need to do this, whatever it is. And then they don't
Right.
take action. And I know
Mhm.
we talked about that a little bit. So kind of going a different direction, then we want to circle back to the book.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? And what made you follow up and take action on that?
I think a lot of people don't take action. Their answer is they're afraid of failure. And I love that Marianne Williamson quote. She wrote the book Return to Love, where she said, our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our greatest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. She goes on to say, it's our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. I think people wonder, if I really do go down this path and I succeed, I don't know if I want to go on podcasts. I don't know if I want to all the responsibility that comes with that. I don't know if I truly want to then have the responsibility of no longer using my fears as an excuse. And so that is a conversation I don't think enough people are having, of what happens if you do succeed.
I think there's people that have shared this before. And if you haven't heard it before, there are those two fears you'll hear people break down, of that fear of failure. But then high performers, and a lot of people actually have that little bit fear of success, in the way of like, if I go to that next level, more is expected of me,
Right.
more is going to be required. And am I willing? People say comfort zone, all those things, like maybe that's part of it. But I often think about, once you go to that next level, people are looking at you, and more people see you, because now you're able to impact. I believe it goes wider, because they go, man, you've written these books, or you've spoken on these stages, or you've done this work. Maybe it's education,
Yeah.
but now your audience has gotten bigger. And so it's fascinating to me, as I think about it. But I'm thankful that you did write the book. And one of the things, as I was going through it, one of the big concepts you shared here was around limiting beliefs. And so, and I want to attack this, because I can honestly say I've had those, and
Yeah,
still
sure.
at time they creep in, and it's like, I would say today I recognize them sooner and faster than I used to, but they still creep in,
Mhm.
and I'll catch them. So let's break down what they are, and kind of where that fits in, and how people, if they're experiencing that today, what do they do around these limiting beliefs that are probably holding them back?
Sure. Well, limiting beliefs are a lot like weeds in our yard or in our garden. And as a kid, during the summertime, one of the things I hated most was when my dad would have left for work and he'd leave a little note telling me what things he needed done around the house. And I was expecting to just eat some cereal, watch some cartoons, and just like do nothing because it's summertime. And invariably, at least once or twice a week, there was a weed the raspberries.
Mm.
And raspberries are prickly, and they were always muddy because it was drip line, and I hated weeding the raspberries. And what I would do is I was trying to get it done as fast as I could, right? And as does the listener, that if you pull weeds fast and you don't get the root, what happens?
Come back.
They grow back. And so a couple days later, he'd leave a note and it would say, weed the raspberries. And yeah, I hated that job because I'd eat the raspberries as I was going along. But if it wasn't in season, then it was muddy and it was messy, and I just never ended. And I think a lot of coaches, even some counselors and therapists, maybe leaders within our church, are approaching limiting beliefs the way that some of us approach weeds. We try to get through them as fast as we can without actually getting to the root. And so something that differentiates what I do with my clients that a lot of coaches and counselors and therapists and pastors, maybe they're not able to do, is we find out, what are the unconscious roots? How did this belief get planted? What decisions did you make? And from a very deep place of NLP, which is neuro linguistic programming, how do we unravel all of that and create something new neural pathways, new beliefs, so you can feel differently, take different action, and get results you've never gotten in your life before.
Well, you hear about that a lot, of the unconscious part of our brain and how powerful that is. And
Mm.
it wasn't for me till about 7 years ago. And even my dad's a psychologist, right? So kind of grew up
Yeah.
around it, understood it and all. But I had one of my coaches break down some of that kind of subconscious beliefs and thought patterns and things like, hey, do you recognize this pattern? And I'm like, no, not until you said that. Right. And then you start to
Right.
become aware of it. And I love you said, we got to get down to the root, and a lot of social media today, a lot of things that we see on TV and all these things, like people are not getting beneath the surface level at all. So as you share that, what would be something tactical that somebody's listening to go, okay, cool. Andrew, Brian, like I want to get down to the root. Like I want to clean those out so they don't come back. Where should they start once they've identified maybe a limiting belief today that's holding them back?
Well, I always believe that if I want my car to be taken care of, I'm not going to touch it. I grew up in a home where I didn't learn any mechanical skills. My dad was a salesperson and he knew how to work with people, and that's kind of what I get to do today as well. So, my first ask would be find someone that you know could help you to do this at a professional level. And if you're not able to find someone, you want to do something immediately, then trust your unconscious mind and do a simple meditation or simple journal entry and just ask your unconscious mind, what is the root cause of this belief? The first event, which when disconnected, it will cause this problem to disappear. And you sit for, no joke, 5 seconds. Your unconscious mind will help you understand what that root cause was. It's stored and it's ready because you're willing, and it will come and you'll identify what that was.
Hmm. I can't tell you how many times, like, I learned the power of visualization as a teenager, and for sports, that was really where it come. And I think that's what a lot of people are afraid of today. Sitting in silence,
Mhm.
letting their thoughts and to work through those things, and not have something stimulating them with, TV, social media, things going. But I love that you share that, because I 100% agree. Find someone that's a professional, right?
Yeah, right.
And then secondly, if you want to do something today, is like, just slow down
Yep.
and be present. I had a coach of mine always share. He said, Brian, you'll get this with 7 kids. I can only imagine.
Mhm.
But with our 3 kids, he's like, the best parenting advice, the best thing I can give you as a leader is be where your feet are. And I remember I was like, okay, be where my feet are. Like, that's where I am. He's like,
Yeah,
no, no,
sure.
no, no, no. It's much more than that. And he would talk about being where your feet are without the distractions, being in the moment, locked in on the other person, or if it's just yourself. And so it's kind of one of those things for me that is a reminder and an anchor of, man, be where your feet are. Like, even during a podcast like this, like, there can be a million things going on in our lives, but to be where your feet are and to be there. I love that you share that, because a lot of people are afraid, I think, of just slowing down, being there and doing that inner work with themselves.
Well, and one of the things that makes it so challenging, Brian, is when you do that inner work, there's not instant dopamine hits. And when we go to social media or food or sex or gambling, I mean, you name the vices, right?
Yeah.
When we go to those things, we are using them as a distracted way to get instant dopamine to help us pull the weed at the surface level. And when we go deep, we get into a place where it's not dopamine, there's serotonin, there's oxytocin, there's other things that we're not used to being fueled by. And when you and I have learned to slow down and bring, whether it's our children or our clients with us, it's a new place.
Yeah.
But that's where we find the deepest meaning and the deepest healing. And we just haven't trained people how to do that. We don't have emotional intelligence today.
Yeah. I'd love for you to talk about this, because you brought up something I wasn't planning to ask, but I love these conversations, because then it kind of triggers another thought. There's this conversation happening lately of people that almost get that dopamine hit
Mhm.
before they've actually accomplished their goal. And so they'll say, okay, I'm going to go, do this task, or I'm going to go run 5 miles or whatever. They get the dopamine hit because they're excited about it, and they're all, but they never follow through and take the actions to actually fulfill that. And I don't know how much to, like, I've recently been paying attention to this because
Sure.
people brought it up. I thought, man, is that why people get so excited to write their goals down, but maybe they don't follow through and finish them?
Well, I actually was listening this morning to Donald Miller. He wrote the book
Oh,
Heroes
yeah.
on a Mission, and he spoke of this very thing. I'm brushing my teeth listening to what you and I are now talking about. And he said the difference, and I see this with the clients that I coach, is, we say that those that write their goals down versus those that don't have a whatever percent chance, a better chance of accomplishing them than the other gap, right? between, if we want to say good to great or great to genius, is
Yeah.
those that then have an action plan. And then if we want to go one step further, I teach this in my book. It's called the Rule of Three. Not only do you have a system or a plan in place, but the third of my Rule of Three is that you have someone who's either doing it with you or guiding you along the way. And once you have that accountability and someone who is going to be there when you don't feel the chemicals, going like they were at the beginning, then we're less likely to quit because someone's watching. So having that written goal, having the plan in place, and then having someone who will be there with us to the journey's end.
I love those three. I was sharing the power of three this week. And then in your book, I'm glad you brought that up because that was one of my notes. I was like, I want to break that down because there is a power of three. I know like a lot of pastors will get this, and some of our people are like, okay, pastors typically speak in 3 bullet points. Leaders, a lot of times, 3 bullet points.
Yeah.
And I love that you shared that because if anybody listening out there, think back to the last time that you did step 1 and step 2, but you didn't have a coach. You probably didn't go as far. Like I know in my own experience, there's been seasons where I didn't have a coach. Now, for the last 7 years, that has not been the case because I realized, okay, Brian, quit fighting what works, right? And that third component, which is really such an important pillar in my mind, is find that person in your life. You're right. And I think that's the way God intended, was someone that you're doing life with that can help you along the journey. And nobody gets there alone, right? And
Right.
great athletes, great leaders. Even this week, I had someone reach out to me, and people have done that for me, but they're like, "Hey, we're getting married. We would love to talk to you and your wife, like, and just learn. Like 21 years later, you guys have been married.
Yeah.
Can you share some things?" I'm like, "Oh, can we?" Like, yes. But I think about, if you don't have that person in your life, that could be the one takeaway today that you go, "Who is that person?" Andrew, and I know you do a lot of this stuff, and we're going to offer some things later. But do you mind breaking that down? Because I think people hear this, and many times I wonder, does it go in one ear, out the other? Do they have a limiting belief of, I can't afford it, or maybe the right person isn't out there, maybe they're not committed to it? Like, let's talk about like the difference between having someone like that in your life, coach or mentor, or someone that's truly planted there with you, and not.
Well, let me tell a story. A couple years ago, me and 3 of my siblings, I'm the youngest of 5, so we were all driving down to an uncle's funeral, and my other sister was already there, and so it was me and my 3 of my older siblings. And on the drive, I said to them, "Listen, you all have watched over and helped raise me throughout my life. I'm an adult now, and I want you to know that I need you now as much as ever before. And I'm identifying some very important people in my world, professionally and personally, that I'm giving permission that when they see something that I'm not seeing, that may not be helping me live out my life mission or helping others live out theirs, that you will call me out immediately. And I give you permission, and I promise I will not take offense." And I said to my 3 siblings at that time, said, will you do that? I need you. I need you to do that and be there for me." And they all said yes. And so now to this day, I've got them. And then I have this conversation probably with a dozen people every few years, just to make sure that there are eyes on me that I can't see when I'm driving because of those blind spots. And so I guess if we could ask everyone to maybe do one thing today, it would be to like pause this recording right now and actually start a text message or make a phone call. And there's someone that you know that you need to help you be more than you're currently being, whether it's in your home, whether it's in your family, right? Whether it's at work, there's a friend. I invite you to reach out to that person and say, "Hey, I just listened to this podcast. I need your help. Can we talk?" And I promise that opening up that one little door will bring an incredible flood of light, because that person will just be the first of many dominoes that begin to fall into place, because you were humble and vulnerable enough to figure out that you're not going to do this by yourself.
Yeah. Man. So I immediately thought of, when you shared that, there's a group text message of 6 guys, all faith-based guys is
Yeah.
really kind of that's really what started it, but all entrepreneurs, successful in totally different fields. And so one of the things I look forward to is just about every day, somebody's texting an update, something inspirational, encouraging. It might be a
Mhm.
verse, it might be them out with their spouse or family. And I can't say, I mean, that's the group that I'm so excited to go share a win, but I'm also the first to go, "Hey, I need some prayer. I need some help on this, guys." Like, if you don't have those people in your life today,
Yeah.
you need to start to build them and put them together. And I remember this, Andrew, is we've had that going on for almost 2 years now. And then recently I met a group and they were talking about that. And so I set up another text thread. And if you're the person that can start that today,
Mhm.
you don't know who in your life might need that. Like, and I love your vulnerability of going to your family and your siblings going, "Hey, I need you to call me out when you see that," and to have that open conversation. And we call it radical honesty. It's just like
Yeah.
radically honest about it. Like, hiding things and not telling me the full truth doesn't help you, doesn't help me, and we get stuck.
Right.
So I love that you share that. So anything else that you would add as you went through this and you've asked for people to do that now, is there a next step to that, or is there anything that you've learned through that?
Well, it would be to follow up with them because just because you gave them permission doesn't mean that they feel totally, confident in the ability to give you critical feedback. And so if I'm ever struggling, I'll call one of my siblings or one of these other people and say, "Hey, this is what I'm going through. What do you see that I'm not seeing?" And taking that proactive ownership to ask them for further help, even though you gave them permission, they're thinking about their own stuff.
That's
And
right.
unless they are truly feeling inspired to reach out, then they're not going to share unless you follow up and ask for further help.
Hmm. The truth. I mean, we talk about this a lot too. Is I mean, the reality, a lot of things we think people are thinking about us way more than they ever are. And people are thinking about themselves, but when you're able to reach out and make that follow up and that connection, I do think that's where life's done, because outside of that, people are thinking about their own world and their
Mhm.
struggles and their dreams and whatever they've got there. So I made this note, and you mentioned this earlier. So I'd love to dive into this because this has been a journey for me as well of diving into your life's mission. And I know
Mm.
that's a big thing that you talked about after limiting beliefs. A lot of people probably thinking, man, I don't know my life's mission. Maybe Simon Sinek, they read the book, Start With Why, and they're like,
Yeah.
maybe I'm gonna find my why out there and all this stuff. But what is your experience and what is your research kind of told you about your life's mission? How can somebody figure out what it is and then live it?
Yeah. Well, it's always about asking the right questions. And as a coach, I'm never here to give people what I think are the right answers. That's what consultants do.
That's
And
right.
then we own the results as the consultant. But as a coach, which is what I do full time, is I have to ask the right questions of myself and of others. And so I'm going to give your people just 5 questions to ask that will help them in this journey. The first question is, who are you meant to serve? We were not meant to serve ourselves. That's why God created a helpmeet and a spouse. That's why He created families and communities. And we cannot go at it alone. And I've also heard it said that the person we are most and best positioned to serve might be the person that we once were, whether that was you as a child or a struggling entrepreneur or me living in my parents' their basement, divorced, thinking I had lost my family and my career. So I want you to think, based on your life experience, who are you best positioned to serve? That's question number one. Anything you want to break down there before we go on to two, three, four, and five?
Well, I resonate with that one.
Yeah.
And the one thing I would add, because I think that lands beautifully, has helped me so much, is that
Hmm.
gave me clarity because at some point we probably all are questioning, trying to figure out who is that audience? Who are we trying to serve? And I either went too broad or too narrow. And what I've realized is taking it back to doing that inner work. Once I realized who I am and who God created me to be, all the experiences I've been through have led me to this point. and who was I 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago? What have I gone through
Yeah.
that I wish I had known or had someone like myself on the other side of it? And so I put myself back in that spot quite often. And I intentionally work with people younger than me a lot of times in coaching and consulting just to say, I was there. And you'll identify them because you'll see them because it was you.
There you go. And if you're struggling with this, you're like, I have no idea who I'm meant to serve. Just go serve someone,
That's right.
right? If you go serve someone, you'll find out exactly who you were meant to serve. So that's question number one. Question number two is, what unique gifts do you have to offer that they so desperately need?
Mm.
And if you're thinking, Andrew, I'm not anyone special, like I'm just doing my thing, like just showing up and listening could be that one unique gift that no one has offered them that you can give. Maybe it is an actual talent. Maybe you do have a skill that you've honed over the years, but showing up as yourself could be what they so desperately need. So question number two, what is it that those you are called and meant to serve so desperately need that you can offer?
Hmm.
So
What if
that
somebody
question.
says to you there,
Mhm.
hey, Andrew, I don't know what I'm good at. And are there any tests or any questions that they should ask themselves to go back and look at where they had success in their life or maybe to
Sure.
discover their uniqueness?
I would offer two suggestions. Number one would be to go to those who know you best and love you most, and say, "Hey, I'm doing this from all humility. It's kind of hard to even ask. What do you see are the unique gifts and talents that I can offer to those that might desperately need what I have?" And they will tell you.
Yeah.
The second would be to think back in your life or even look back on journal entries or find moments where you felt like you were in a state of passion and joy and you would do what you were doing for free. When you were doing that thing, you were in your genius zone and you were using those unique gifts and talents that God has gifted you.
Love that.
Okay, question number three. What is so important to you about using those gifts to serve those people?
Mm.
And this is where we get to the why, right? That meaning. And a lot of times people will say, well, because I feel like this is what God needs me to do, or because I was once that person. I can't imagine going back without having someone to help me. And we answer that question, what is so important to you, which provides that meaning and that purpose to use those gifts to serve those people.
Yeah. That's one, you hit home because I think for a lot of people, they probably will connect at some point, a low point in their life
Mhm.
when it was all falling apart and they can go, if I just had that one person,
Right.
or maybe they did have that one person that helped them out
Hmm.
and they recognize they can be that one.
Yeah, exactly. So question number four is, what does this do for you? And that may seem selfish at first, but if it doesn't light you up, if it doesn't bring you into a state of joy or fulfillment or passion or purpose, if it doesn't spark that internal flame that was placed there by divine, means, then we probably need to go back and just look at some of those other things.
Mhm.
So when we can recognize that this is something that makes me literally want to jump out of my seat after a great coaching call, when I know someone has just had a moment where their life has changed, I will literally just like do like a fist pump, or I'll just like put my hands up in the air and I'm just like, yes, this
Yeah.
is it. And when we arrive to, it's not always like that, but when we arrive to that, spectrum of joy and of
Mhm.
fulfillment and passion, then we recognize that we're living our life mission.
Love that.
So, question number five. So, why are you here? And if you take all four of those questions and put them together, then you'll come out with something that sounds maybe like mine. And my life mission is to bless my brothers and sisters, whom I believe to be Heavenly Father's children, to live their highest level of spiritual strength. And it's to influence as many as possible. I do so as a husband, a father, and a coach. That's my life mission.
I love that you shared that. I'm curious, how long did it take you to get clarity all the way through that. And I'm guessing those were the 5 questions you went through this exercise. So did it take you a while to do that? Was it, what was the process?
Well, I had the cheat code,
Okay.
and the cheat code was, and I'm gonna actually let your listeners go find out this story. I'm gonna leave a hanger.
Okay.
They can find this story in my book, but I found mine in a matter of minutes, and it took 14 years of my childhood and pre-adolescence to get to there. I actually knew, Brian, my life mission when I was 14 years old. And so I'm going to let your listeners go hear me, whether it's audible, my own voice, or they read it, the story as to how that happened for me.
Oh, I love it. I love it. That'll leave him to go follow up and to check something out. So I do want to circle back to the book because the 5 questions,
Sure.
hopefully everybody has written those down. It's got them thinking, right? And that's what I love about these shows is these conversations. If you're not thinking about and putting yourself in that situation of, okay, this is where I am, this is where I want to be. Now I have the tools and the questions to help me move there. Go back and rewind it and listen to it again.
Yeah.
Right. And if you're like me, a lot of times it's 3, 4, 5 times I'll listen to it, make notes, and it'll jar my memory. But I do want to go back to the book
Yeah.
because, growing up, my dad loves trees. We live, kind of central Tennessee here in Nashville and middle Tennessee and love the beautiful trees and all that. So of course, when I saw that strength of the oak, strength of the willow, I'm like, hold on, I love trees. Like
Yeah.
where is this going? I know you kind of talked about the background of some of that there. What's really the strength of the oak?
Sure. So I had a coach who told me about, I don't know, 6, 7 years ago, said, Andrew, you have incredible oak like strength. And what you need is more willow in you. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like
Yeah.
this metaphor. And he said, well, the oak is one of the strongest trees that we know of. It will never break in a storm because of its strength and its deep roots. And it has this huge, canopy, and it lives forever and has this incredible defense system. He started teaching me about an oak, and he said, that's how you are. You show up with that kind of courage and commitment in everything that you do. He said, there's a complementary strength as well. And it's not a competing strength. And it's not like you have one or the other. You have both of these in you, and it's the strength of the willow. It's not the courage, but it's the compassion. It's the willingness to bend in a storm without breaking. And if you do, to plant one of those branches right in the ground and grow a new tree, because that's what willows do. It's grace, it's humility, it's compassion. And I was so grateful that he helped me see that in myself. And that's been a metaphor now that I've used for the last 7 years, and I use with my clients, and I wrote the book on it. And it's truly something that has changed my life, and it's fun to hear what it does for those who adopt this mindset as well.
I love the way you break that down because when I first saw the book and you shared it with me, I was like, hold on, I think I know what this is. And I've heard it shared different ways, but I want to read this because for anybody out there and you're going to check out the book, I wanted to read this because when I was looking up what people said about this comment stuck out to me. And I love these. I'm walking away from this book feeling empowered. I have identified what is truly important to me, how I can push past any limiting beliefs, and how I can make my dreams a reality. And you talked about owning your story and some of these different things. And I thought about that because, and who doesn't want to feel empowered in today's world where you have so many competing agendas and people telling you what you can't do, who you can't be, and all of this. And really, we're in this search for meaning and purpose in your life. And I love that you share those too, because anybody that's been around any trees or even on the earth for long enough to even listen to this, you can visualize an oak and you can visualize a willow. And I love the way you explained it because in storms in our life, you're either in one now, coming out of one, you're heading into one in the future. Who are you going to be in the storm? And one of my coaches shared something similar to this that I would love for you to expand on in your thoughts.
Yeah.
And he said, it's almost like the buffalo running into the storm. And I'm sure you've heard the story, the buffalo runs into the storm to get to the other side of it versus most everybody else will just run away and they end up being in the storm for a lot longer because they really don't face their fears. They don't face what's in front of them, the obstacles and those things. And I had a coach share with me, he's like, you have to be more than the buffalo. You have to become the storm and really become part of that to find out not only your light that God created, but there's a dark side to you as well that needs to battle, and you need pursuit and purpose there, and you need to fight through it to learn the lesson, to get stronger, so that you've got both the oak and the willow going through that. And I don't know if that resonates at all or how that plays out, but as I was prepping for this, I thought, man, that's
Yeah.
similar.
That story of that buffalo is really neat. And something happens to that buffalo when it runs into the storm. And something happens with the tree when it embraces the turbulence. And what I call it in my book is stress wood. And stress wood is fascinating. That's what they call it. It's what happens inside of the fibers of the tree as it withstands a storm. On the opposite end of the spectrum, a few years back, these scientists went into a 3-acre biodome in Arizona, and they secluded themselves for a couple of years from everyone, and they were just going to live within this cool little world that they built. And they watched as plants and trees would just grow like ridiculously fast, and then they would die. And the one thing that they forgot to account for within this biodome was wind, turbulence. And without that turbulence, without that opposition that we experience as mortals here on this journey, without the temptation and the strife and the struggle and the storms, the buffalo and the oak and the willow, they don't create that stress wood, that resilience, the ability to find an inner strength that they need when everything outside of them is just chaos.
You know, I've looked, and you probably know this with brand builders, is resiliency is actually where I landed on my life story. And as I go back through, really my brand DNA, part of that. So I'd love for you to define resilience for people out there. It's been used a lot. And so I've been studying it more and more and more as we've been through this. But as you shared that, I just thought, okay, I'm going to take this opportunity to ask, how would you define resiliency? And then how can people become more resilient?
Yeah, so I'm going to use the oak and the willow. And if I have to sum up the oak in one word, it's courage. And the willow in one word, it's compassion, which is why the subtitle of the book is How to Find Courage and Compassion in a Turbulent World. It's the resiliency to me is the courage to stay committed to your life mission and the values and principles that you know will get you there. It's the never look back, burn the boats, I'm all in, leading with my heart. Courage comes from the French word cœur, which means heart. So it's of the heart. You are all in with your heart. There's no turning back on the things that matter most. That provides the resilience of an oak. And then on the flip side, it's the compassion. Passion is a powerful word. Passion means suffering, the passion of the Christ, right? Calm means with. So it's able to suffer with ourselves and others in a way that allows us to bend through the storms without breaking. So having that resilience, that ability to bend in a compassionate way, to love others and ourselves when we don't maybe feel like we deserve it because of what's going on around us.
So it's got to be one of my favorite. And I was hoping you would go there with that, because I thought I got to take the opportunity, because, you know, there's so much correlation between that. And I love that, because people, one, need to go buy your book. I'll just tell you guys, you need to get that. And two, if you look at your own life today, there's probably areas you've identified today just listening. You're like, I'm not totally happy with the way I'm showing up.
Right.
I'm starting to recognize I'm called for more. I'm called to do more. I'm not showing up to be my best. And I would hope you go rewind some of this. You've got some notes that are there, but I'd love for you, Andrew, to talk about this. Is if people aren't satisfied, they're not happy with how they're showing up today. We've talked about some things they can do, and we've given them some ideas, some metaphors, some things just to go, hey guys, here's the direction you can go, and a lot to work with. But if somebody's out there and they're just like, man, I'm not happy with kind of who I am today.
Yeah.
What would you say to them, and what
I'd say to them, what one of my great mentors said to me, Chad Hymas. Chad Hymas is a quadriplegic. The Wall Street Journal is calling him one of the 10 most influential speakers of all time. And I showed up and listened to Chad speak about 3.5 years ago, and I was a little bit, like, to be honest, like, I was like, what is a Hall of Fame, speaker? Because that's what he is in the National Speaker Association. He's in the Hall of Fame. Like, what 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 does he have to offer that I haven't already heard? And
Hmm.
that was my pride and ego speaking. I was
Sure.
kind of like, all right, show me, Chad. Like, what do you got? And to be honest, like, I was picking apart his his message as he was speaking, and I was showing up in all the wrong ways, just totally being just just ego filled. And at one moment, he wheeled up, and there was a 6 foot round table between he and I. So I'm sitting in my chair, he's in his, and he looked me in the eyes and he said, "Don't know what your purpose and passion is? Go serve someone."
Mm.
Sonic boom. It was like he had reached into the heart chords of my soul and just yanked on them.
Yeah.
And I literally just started crying. I cry a lot. You've heard 2 cry stories today.
Yeah.
And I just started crying. I wrote that down as quickly as I could, and I still have that page, and I share it in my book. You don't know what your purpose and passion is, go serve someone,
Mhm.
and you will find it today.
I think that's what the word for most people today is go serve, and there's so many opportunities to do that today. And I think about even where we live, which is a very affluent county and community and all of these different things. You look around, you're like, but then you see the divorce rates, you see the
Mm,
kids that need help, and you have so many opportunities just right around you. You don't have to travel to another country. Not saying that's a bad thing. We've done it and I think it's phenomenal, but just in your own city, find somewhere you can serve. And I know even our church is asking for more volunteers, right? Schools asking for more volunteers. Sports teams need more volunteers. Like there is such a shortage there, and go serve. I'll put a plug in for our local group this week. We just started back our All Pro Dads. So for all the dads listening, if you don't have a chapter where you are, reach out. We can help you with that piece. But I will say, I connected with one of the guys that's really leading that. I'm like, how can I help? How can I serve? What can I do there? And that prompted me because that's an area of just very near and dear to my heart. That I want to see families stay together, and I want to see kids get cared for and have opportunities. And if that's on your heart, man, go jump in. Just say, I'm in. Where can I serve? And I share that story just so you know really how easy it is.
yeah,
Don't overcomplicate it.
right.
And even with where I think I'm serving at a certain level, there's probably more that I can be doing. And that's true for all of us. So Andrew, I've loved this, man. This is we could jam for a lot longer, but I do want to leave people wanting more, and I want them to connect up with you. I know we're going to put a link later. We had talked about potentially having a free call for the first 3 people that set up for that. You want to give them the link, and we'll include it in the notes as well. But where can they go to set up that free call to connect up with you if they're like, dude, I resonate what you're talking about. I need you in my life. I need help.
Yeah. So freecall.andrewlanderson.com.
Boom. We'll put it in the links. And where can they find you on social and get your book? Because we're going to put links in there, but I
Sure.
want to make sure if they're listening to it, they want to take action now, they can go do it.
Yeah, Amazon. Amazon's the best place to find Strength of the Oak, Strength of the Willow. And then you can follow me on social media at Andrew L. Anderson 85.
Love it. Okay, last question as we wrap up. I always think about this is the show called Your Competitive Edge, Finding Your Competitive Edge. So I was listening to you share your mission.
Mhm.
Do you think within that, do you know what your competitive edge is that makes you unique and different there? That is something that stands out that you'd say, that's my competitive edge. That's what makes me great.
Yeah, I think it's the ability to have been through a lot of heartache and failures without failing and being able to move forward, understanding what it takes to bring that courage and compassion. And I can show up for a client and I can smack them in the face with an oak bat, or I can hand them a branch of a willow as a peace offering. And people sometimes get confused by me because they say, you're so energetic, you're so like this on stage. And when I hear him with you, I feel so much peace. I said, well, listen, I'm showing up with the energy that you need today. And I'm here to serve you. And I can be whatever God needs me to be for you today. And when you have those strengths, you can call on both of them and use them. So my competitive advantage is my life experience that has allowed me to bring these strengths to others.
Well, I picked up on that today, and what a blessing. I just want to affirm that and tell you, man, thank you for showing up with who you are and loving on your bride, 7 kids. I still don't know how you do that with our 3. I'm like, when you told me 7, I'm like, man, it tells you your capacity to care and to love, but also be strong like the oak. And I thought about that as you're sharing stories today, and I was preparing for this. Is what a blessing people are going to get to listen to this. And those that, if you've stayed all the way through, my ask, and I'm sure Andrew would say the same, is take one thing today, just one, and do something now, not tomorrow, not next week. Don't wait. But if something has prompted you in your heart and you felt like a little tug, and you know what I'm talking about, take action. And if you need help or something has really prompted you to take an action, let us know. That's really why we do the show. I'm sure that's why Andrew still shows up and comes in ready to go. And he's prepped. He's ready to deliver value. Is we want to make that collective impact in the world. That's why we do the show. That's why we bring on great guests. And Andrew, you've done that today. So I just want to affirm that as, man, the way you show up, it was really cool to see that get unpacked today, and how that is a both and situation of the oak and the willow, and then how we can do that in our own lives. And what a great thing and visual picture to go, I need to be more of the oak right now, or I need to bring in more of the willow right now. And I can be both.
Thank you. It's been an honor to spend some time with you today, Brian. And I want to thank the listener. You have that strength within you. God put it there. And now you get to figure out how it can serve our world.
What an opportunity. So guys, this has been another episode, Finding Your Competitive Edge. And today, hopefully something sparked you. And you're like, you know what? I'm not living up to my full potential, but I'm going to as a result of this. And so my challenge to you is take that one thing, go do something with it. Make sure that you're living your best life and inspiring and serving those around you. Get out there and do something great. We appreciate you. Thanks for listening in. Make sure you like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Leave us a comment and feedback there, is that's how we continue to learn and grow ourselves and make sure that we're delivering the maximum amount of value. So we'll drop links so you can connect up with Andrew, and make sure you follow along and catch us on the next episode. Have a great rest of your day and an amazing week.